One. All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Deal Flow Live. I'm your host, Brody Vinson,
I'm your other host, Ryan Santa.
and today we've got an extra special episode for you. We are analyzing listings of businesses in the health and wellness space. We're going to be talking about health and wellness related businesses in Florida that are currently up for sale. So these are listed online on a website called Businesses for Sale. It's a very popular listing website where anyone can go and find these listings and get in contact with whoever's selling the business or whoever's representing them. And we're going to be talking about what the structure of these deals looks like, as well as whether or not we think they're under or overvalued, and what kind of person we think would be right to take ownership of something like this or buy something like this. Ryan, what are you excited for with these types of businesses? What gets you going on these?
The variety. I think there's a lot of different spaces within this industry that you can find success in, whether or not you have a background in it or not. Like we've seen everything from IV drips to supplement places to med spas. There's a place for everyone. And whether you want to be more hands on or you want to be able to just be managing a place that provides these services, there's a lot of it. There's a lot of variety for a number of different people. So I think it'll be a good introduction to this space as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a very up and coming industry too. There's always new trends and things in health and wellness, and I think you see new types of businesses popping up in it all the time. One of my business partners and our friends is very invested in the health and wellness space. He's made really a living off of it, and it's an alternative health and wellness type of thing. And it's ever evolving. He's always got new products coming out and new things happening. And so being in this space is really interesting because you get to be on the forefront of things like that. And if you're good at finding those trends and capitalizing on them, you can really do well in this space from what I've seen.
Yeah, it's a very interesting space with a lot of different avenues that people don't normally. Even senior care is under this, so it's a very wide spanning space.
It is. And so, I mean, with that being said, let's go ahead and hop into it with a big one. I figured we could start with this huge one. Now, the first thing I'll call out here is that it actually doesn't have an asking price listed. I will say, although we haven't really seen this on the show before, this is more commonplace with mergers and acquisitions firms. I have a client right now that's going through a more formal mergers and acquisitions firm, and this is typically the way they do it, which is they ask for you, the potential buyer, to make a bid on the business rather than listing an asking price, so that you can make your own informed decision. Personally, as someone selling my business, I kind of like this strategy. I think it's a decent one. It's interesting because it might attract less interest, but it leaves you in a little bit better territory potentially if someone out there does see more value in it than you saw yourself.
Yeah, it definitely offers you a bit more flexibility, a bit more of ownership over what's going out there.
One of the brokers I'm partnered with, the main broker I'm partnered with, has a business listed right now that had an original asking price of about $17 million. They have a $30 million offer on it right now.
Just because they did this? Just because?
They didn't even do this. But to me, that illustrates just how hot some sectors are and how much buyer interest there is. We get into the private equity world with what we do together, and you make a lot of money by buying a business, packaging a lot together, and reselling them. So sometimes people are willing to overpay for them because they know that's part of the strategy.
Interesting. That's I didn't know that you had somebody who was, almost doubling it, just even leaving it out there with a price. That's incredible.
And he's had a business before that was listed for 20 million and sold for over 30. And it's not that uncommon. It just depends on the competitiveness of the industry and how many buyers are interested. So this is an interesting strategy right off the bat.
Well, when you're dealing with insurance companies, if you're able to properly handle them and get through them, it's very lucrative.
And that was another thing I was going to say. They list right off the bat there that it's a well-established Medicare and Medicaid home health business. What that means is, assuming they keep good relations with those insurance carriers, they have guaranteed business and they don't have to hunt for it. And I have done a little bit of work with a business owner like this before, where her business was, it was a psychiatric care type of business. It was like mental health care. And most of her business was through Medicaid. And it was really interesting because her business would, she would get a new Medicaid contract and all of a sudden her business would almost double. And this can be an incredibly lucrative business. So for someone who maybe has relationships already with a lot of these carriers, especially if you have relationships with carriers that are not already on board with this company and you expect that you can get them on board, you could grow a business like this very, very fast if you get in with the right people.
And that's exactly why it's priced the way it is, meaning, available upon request. They're positioning for somebody who clearly has a place in the space. I don't think many people are coming out the gate for a first, or an acquisition on individual with this money. So this is very much a poignant, we are looking to stay in the network type of business, looking to kind of, maybe sell to a competitor at some point, but not outwardly say who's selling.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a good point. And maybe the strategy here is even to just create a little bit more of that competitive tension, even if they are talking to a competitor, just by virtue of having it on the market. But I'm curious, what do you think about what this business would be worth based on what you're seeing? We got cash flow of a whopping $1.9 million a year.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of meat on the bone. It's a big business.
Well, if you're doing 11 top line, you're taking home almost 2. That's probably a 5x, right? We're thinking probably a 5x
or more.
I mean,
yeah,
I could see this going
if
into
it's
the
been
20.
pretty consistent and it's been growing good year over year. Depends on what the business looks like. Let's take another look at some of the internals of the business. There's a pretty huge write up here. More than 25 years of experience. Let's see. The business actually running. It's been around since 1998. It's got 150 employees.
Real estate's included.
Real estate is included.
It's probably a big building.
Yep. If the real estate is included and you're purchasing the real estate itself, that changes things a lot. That adds a lot to the asking price, of course. The seller is selling for personal reasons, but will assist for a transitional period. It sounds, they list retirement as the reason for selling. Obviously, they've had this for a little while. With 150 employees, a lot is probably being handled. The business owner themselves is probably not doing a lot of the day-to-day here. And I mean, depending on what that structure looks like internally, what their actual day-to-day looks like as far as being in touch with the carriers and making sure those relationships stay good and stay on board, I would say this is, this could even fetch like a 6 or 7 times multiple at that level.
I think factoring in real estate and that size, I think we're talking like 40 million. I think that's...
You think 40 million?
Yeah, because I'm assuming if you're housing 150 people, this is a Medicare, Medicaid, so it's a medical facility. We're not talking... FFE is not listed here.
Well, I think we got to look at the cash flow more so. Well, how much do you think the real estate is?
That's what I'm saying. I think a building... I think the real estate plus the FFE, easily 10.
It could be.
Because you're probably fitting out that stuff with all sorts of things.
Let's try to isolate the business a little bit, though. Let's pretend real estate is not involved. Let's go strictly off the numbers a little bit, just for the sake of like analyzing the business itself. I'm gonna say I think that reasonably you might be able to fetch about 11.4 million for this business on its own.
Okay.
I have it at about a 6x multiple.
Okay. I would say they're probably closer. I would say maybe 15, just because what I've seen trending is that the sales revenue, usually people just try to go X% above it. And sometimes people aren't going off of cash flow, unfortunately, which I like to see the cash flow 1923, meaning they probably actually did get close to the actual cash flow and then just round up to 2. Always nice.
With a business this size too, it's once you get to this point, it's pretty likely that you have solid bookkeeping. It's tough to get to that level if you don't. So usually you can count on the bookkeeping a little bit more.
Yeah, that's
they're with a lot of carriers.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a lot.
that's why I think it could be. So I think they're also selling their book, which is more to the sales price. Because if you're already working with those carriers, it means that you have relationships, which in the insurance world, relationships to carriers and people who work in those carriers is pretty much it's as good as gold. Because that means that your claims usually get done quicker or you're at the top of a queue. So if they're leveraging that too, they're probably charging a mint for that on what their evaluation is.
Could be. And I mean, with something like this, it seems like such a good business. I feel like this is one of those that will probably sell at a higher multiple than is standard for their level of cash flow. That's why I said maybe a 6 or 7x, just because it's such a desirable type of business. I think they're just very well positioned. They've got a great presence in a few different counties in Florida. They list an opportunity for expansion. I don't want to know more about that. I want to know more about like the relationships with the carriers there, how that could work. But I think, they've been around for a long time. They've got great cash flow. I like this one a lot.
I do too. I think if there was somebody in the space and they had the ability to kind of free up some cash and do something like this, if it made sense, this is good just by the fact that you get a functioning business in the space that maybe will help whatever or accommodate or God, what's the word? It's when something complements. It complements maybe something you're doing. But either way, this feels like something that internally in the industry, probably there's only so many people doing this, and it's probably going to end up being a bidding war between people in the industry who probably are in the same thing, trying to snatch up that next piece of the puzzle.
I would say so too. It's also very highly possible that, once you're at this level, you're definitely attracting attention from pretty established private equity. So I think this is a very well positioned business. It's a cool one to see just listed on here. And it's a new listing. It probably hasn't been listed for long. I would be surprised if it stays listed for long.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if this was there next week.
Yeah. And we've had, with my broker partner, we've had businesses that have sold within a matter of a couple weeks before, like literally a few weeks. Like once they're listed, at least. Let's look at something different to round us out. What's catching your eye?
Oh, let's go down a bit. Let's see, are there any IVs? Is there any IV drips? Oh, eye care. That's nice. That's cool.
Here?
Yeah, I wonder if that involves a doctor. Optometric.
Yeah, interesting.
Is that owner retiring?
So I do believe you have to be a particular type of doctor for this. Like you have to be an optometrist.
Okay. This is
past 35 years. Complete eye care center.
I wonder is this listed by an individual or broker? Because it feels very owner listed.
I see that too. I get that vibe as well. It looks like you can contact the seller directly.
Okay, so this is like this is a hand done one. Okay.
They're asking 1.325 million here.
Mm-hmm.
They've got cash flow of 376. So that puts them at about
a lot.
That puts them at a 3.5x multiple. I would say that's a little high for where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they're probably not going to end up selling for that amount, especially with something like a medical practice at this size. Usually that's going to mean that the owner has to be replaced by someone who also has those credentials.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's possible, but they're only willing to provide 10% seller financing. They are willing to help train and transition, but it doesn't sound like they're very flexible on that. This one I would say is a little bit overpriced. What are your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. Oh, Oscar from YouTube saying what you guys are doing is very interesting. Thank you, Oscar. We love doing this. We find it really fun to kind of do these analysis. So if you have any questions or any business industries you want us to look at, let us know for sure. We'd love to help you guys out.
Yeah, Oscar, let us know what you think of this business that we're looking at right now. Let us know if it's something you think is underpriced or overpriced, and let us know if there's anything else you would want us to go into about it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. In the meantime, what do you think, Ryan? Let me know your thoughts on it.
I think it's definitely going to be a hard sell in the sense, like you said, just based on price. With doctors' offices, you're always wondering, is the practice going to accept a new doctor? How are they going to respond to that? I mean, it's good that they have, they noted they speak English and Spanish, so they have a bilingual staff. Is the doctor bilingual? How many people who speak Spanish? If the new doctor doesn't, there's so many factors with people in this stuff. I think when you're selling it, you're selling real estate, you're selling a book.
It does say they're leased. So you want to know what the lease terms are as well. They're in a busy shopping mall. That's positive. They get some foot traffic and such. I would want to know where the customers come from altogether. Is it just foot traffic? Do they have other sources? I would want to know a little bit more, but it does isolate the real estate.
Oh, don't worry about that, Oscar. We're all here to learn. So if you just want to, you can throw out whatever you think. But hey, you saw your private equity video.
Yeah, thank you for supporting, Oscar. I appreciate you being here watching, and I appreciate you looking into the private equity video. To tell you a little bit, because you said like you like what we're doing here, I would love to tell you a little bit about why Ryan and I do this, just to give you some kind of a peek into it. You said our private equity partner always goes and meets the CEOs in person. So that's a way to go to. I would say that's a really, really good call. That's part of our strategy as well, is any meetings that we set. That's the biggest reason I would say that with our firm, we're focused exclusively on businesses here in the local area, because we can go meet them and set in-person meetings. And it's very important to establishing that rapport. If you are trying to buy someone's business, aside from just the deal making sense on paper, it's important that you sell yourself on being the new CEO of the business, essentially, or whoever you're going to be putting into place. And Oscar, to tell you a little bit about why we do this, why we do Deal Flow Live, is because of what we're doing with the private equity things. This just helps educate people on both sides of the aisle, whether it's someone who's trying to go out and buy businesses to form a fund and eventually sell it, or something similar, maybe even buy and hold. This is just a kind of our opinions on what you should be looking for as a buyer, what you should be thinking about, how you should be approaching these. And also, if you're someone who's trying to sell your business to private equity, these are the types of things that you should be thinking and maybe adjusting for as a seller and someone trying to maximize your exit to private equity. What else do you think you would want to know about this one, Ryan? What about the employees? What do you think it looks like in there?
I'm assuming, I don't know the technical term for the assistants of an optometrist, but how many are front desk? How many are actually assisting with
You're talking
the
about
exams?
Optimites.
Is that really what they're called?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I have a friend who does this, and I'm sorry, I forget their job title.
I can't remember either.
I would like to know what sort of, I know they state they do all insurance policies. Name them, because I'm sure you don't accept all of them. As a doctor's office, what sort of marketing are you doing, if any? I'd want to know the average month to month and how many patients you're seeing. I mean, is that
growing?
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where the financials will tell us that fairly quickly too. There's just a lot when it comes to this one that that price is going to be knocked down tremendously, and I feel like it's one of those where since you're dealing with the owner, it's good and bad. It's good because you get to have the real conversation with the real person without an intermediary. But it's, on the other hand, not as great because their emotions are going to be tied up so heavily into this that you don't have that intermediary broker being like, hey, look, objectively speaking,
I'm not sure what that noise was, but
that was me getting thrown to the back. I'm backstage now.
Let me bring you back.
I'm back. All right, cool. We're back in it, boys. Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it that I feel like isn't listed here, and it's like we said, it's a seller selling his business. There's no broker to say, look, objectively, this is a good deal, and you're trusting me to facilitate that.
Right.
This is going to be possibly an uphill battle with somebody feeling like their emotional investment is greater than what the actual investment's worth.
Here's one thing to kind of round out the conversation on this one that we have brought up many times on this show that I think is a helpful point, whether you're on the buying side or the selling side of this. It's the law of price and terms. We've heard this so many times now, but obviously our opinion was that this is an overpriced business for where it's at. And if the seller is very hard on that price, if they need that price for whatever reason, then as a buyer, that could be okay, depending on what the terms are. Maybe they're willing to jack up the amount of seller financing more to achieve that price, and that works great. But if they're not, usually the law of price and terms helps you come to a place where it's either you're sticking with their price and adjusting the terms a little bit, or you're taking the price down a little bit and sticking to the terms that they're asking for. And if you bring up that conversation as a buyer of a business like this, that can help you kind of set the stage to have a more productive conversation. Because the reality is that, I think someone's trying to sell a business like this. If they do stay firm on the terms that they have listed in the asking price, both, and they're not willing to budge on anything, I do think they'll have a lot of trouble selling this.
I agree. I also think there's something to be said that sellers if they don't need the money now, a seller can make more money on the sale by being essentially the bank, by holding. They don't lose any money. They're just saying, I'll hold this. You'll pay me back at a 5 or 7%. That's interest. We're paying you more than the asking price is over X amount of months or years. And I think a lot of sellers discount that unless they absolutely need the money that moment. If as a seller you don't, become the bank and get more out of it than what you were getting into it. So that's always my philosophy. I think sometimes they get scared and they're like, I need the money now, but strictly, not a tax professional, not a tax advice person at all. But logically speaking, when you get a large sum of money, you usually pay more taxes on the large sum of money. So if you get smaller sums of money all a long time, you're usually going to do better in the long term, at least from my general understanding here. And again, that was very vague and very ambiguous for purposes.
It's a real reason to consider seller financing. A lot of people do it because of that. But let us know what you think in the comments. If you're watching this now, let us know. Again, thanks again, Oscar, for tuning in. Have a great day at
work tomorrow, Oscar.
Yep. Hope work goes well tomorrow, Oscar. Hope to have you tune in again next week, every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And in the meantime, tune in the comments if you're watching this and tuning in afterwards. Let us know what you think of these businesses. Are they overpriced, underpriced in your opinion? What else would you want to know about the internal side of the business? But again, this has been Deal Flow Live. I've been Brody Vinson.
I've been Ryan Santa.
And if you're looking to find me, you might be here on YouTube. You can find me there. You can find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram, TikTok, pretty much virtually anywhere. And if you're trying to find Ryan,
I am on LinkedIn at the moment, but I will be expanding that at some point soon. LinkedIn Ryan Santa. Just shoot me a note with your request.
Let us know what types of businesses you want to see covered on here, what industries, what areas. We're open to covering anything. We love talking about all kinds of different industries. So let us know and tune in next time. See you guys then.